9. Object 279. Developed in the Soviet Union during the late 1950s. The Object 279 was an exceptional all-terrain heavy tank with 4 tracks and a distinctive rounded hull, unlike any other tank before or after it. Weighing in at a massive 66 tons, 60 metric tons, and with heavy armor measuring up to 10.6 inches, 27 centimeters thick, it was supposedly capable of withstanding a nuclear blast. Its unusual shape was meant to deflect the shock waves of an explosion. The Object 279 was also equipped with a powerful diesel engine, enabling it to travel at speeds of up to 34 miles per hour, 55 kilometers per hour, despite its heavy weight. But the costs of developing the vehicle were higher than its practical value, and the program was short-lived. In 2022, the Kubinka Tank Museum posted a video of a restored prototype that a team of experts had managed to get back into working order. It's believed to be the only surviving Object 279 out of the very few that were ever built. 8. Yakovlev Yak-36. The Yakovlev Yak-36, known by its NATO reporting name, Freehand, was one of the Soviet Union's first attempts at developing a turbojet aircraft with vertical takeoff and landing, or VTOL, capabilities. Development on this experimental aircraft began during the mid-1950s, and the Yak-36 took its first flight in 1963. 4 prototypes were built, but it never reached operational status. One of the biggest problems with the Yak-36 was the fact that if one of its 2 engines stalled while in hover mode, the aircraft instantly overturned and crashed. But its marginal capabilities didn't stop the Soviets from touting it as a huge success. In reality, the Yak-36 paved the way for further attempts to develop a VTOL-capable aircraft, including several that also failed. 7. Chrysler TV-8 tank. During the 1950s, the Chrysler Corporation proposed the development of a nuclear-powered tank with a pod-shaped hull called the TV-8. The peculiar-looking vehicle was not only unique because of its obviously strange appearance, but because it would have a 4,000-mile, 6,437-kilometer range thanks to its nuclear-powered engine. This would arguably give the TV-8 an advantage over more traditional and far less energy-efficient gas and diesel-fueled tanks. A prototype was built with the goal of making the vehicle capable of withstanding a nuclear blast. In order to achieve this objective, the TV-8's designers crammed the tank's 90mm gun, crew, and engine inside its large, bulbous turret. Even with all its components factored in, the tank weighed in at just 25 tons, 22.7 metric tons, making it much more lightweight than most other vehicles of its kind at the time. But the idea failed to take off for several reasons. For one, the prototype was powered by gasoline, rather than the nuclear engine its designers boasted about, and there were obvious concerns regarding what would happen if enemy fire struck the engine and caused radiation to leak from it. The TV-8 proposal was ultimately scrapped after officials concluded that the TV-8 did not have enough potential advantages over other tanks to be worth investing in. 6. Lockheed F-117 Nighthawk. Developed during the early 1980s, the Lockheed F-117 Nighthawk was the first operational aircraft to be designed with stealth technology. It was built by Lockheed's infamously secretive Skunk Works division. Known as a Black Project, the F-117 was kept secret from even some of the most top-ranking Pentagon officials. The F-117's distinctive shape was designed to reflect radar, but was aerodynamically unstable, requiring constant correction from a fly-by-wire system. In addition to having quadruple redundant fly-by-wire controls, it was equipped with sophisticated navigation and attack systems, and an automated planning system, which could release weapons and perform virtually all the functions of an attack mission. The government went out of its way to prevent the public from discovering the aircraft. When an F-117 pilot fatally crashed in the Sequoia National Forest in 1986, authorities quickly guarded off the area and imposed a strict media blackout. The Air Force restricted the airspace above the wreck and had a helicopter circle overhead to ensure that nobody could even try to get close enough to know what was going on. Firefighters were denied entry to the site, even though the wreck was on fire. The F-117 debris was cleared away and replaced with the staged wreck of a different aircraft. The government publicly acknowledged the existence of the F-117 in 1988 after a grainy photograph of its silhouette in the night sky was revealed during a Pentagon press conference. It made its first public appearance the following year. The F-117 was retired in 2008. Some of the aircraft have been kept in airworthy condition in the years since and have occasionally been seen flying. What's the fastest thing you've ever been in? Tell us in the comments and hit subscribe while you're at it. 5. Sikorsky UH-60 Blackhawk. You've probably heard of the legendary Blackhawk helicopter, which means that it's obviously not a top-secret vehicle. But there were, or are, reportedly plans in place to develop a stealth version of the chopper. The idea of turning the Blackhawk into a stealth helicopter originated in 1978. In 2011, 2 highly modified versions of the chopper were used in the U.S. Special Operations mission in Pakistan, known as Operation Neptune Spear, better known as the mission that resulted in Osama bin Laden's death. Piloted by Army aviators, the modified MH-60s transported 23 Navy SEALs, a combat dog, and an interpreter from Jalalabad, Afghanistan to the raid site. They were followed by a pair of backup MH-47 helicopters. During the mission, one of the Blackhawks made a hard landing. Luckily, nobody was hurt. The team blew the faulty chopper up with explosives before leaving bin Laden's compound in one of the backup helicopters. Most of the MH-60 was destroyed, but part of the tail section remained intact. Leaked photos revealed that it was unlike any other Blackhawk tail ever seen before. It was later found to have features that were detailed in previous plans to turn the helicopter into a stealth vehicle. In 2020, the first and only known photo of a heavily modified stealth Blackhawk was leaked to the public. It's the closest any ordinary person will probably ever get to seeing one of the actual helicopters that were used in Operation Neptune Spear. Little is known about the helicopter in the undated photo. According to The Drive, it is somehow connected to Fort Eustis in Virginia. The base is home to the Aviation Technology Office, ATO, which was reportedly responsible for developing the modified choppers that were used in Operation Neptune Spear. It's unclear when or where the snapshot was taken or what program the stealth helicopter was developed for, but it appears as though the picture was captured in a desert setting, suggesting that it may have been taken at a military location in the American Southwest. This would make sense since the region is home to numerous secretive flight testing facilities. Unfortunately, the most anyone can know about the aircraft is what they can glean by looking at the photo of it, leaving one to guess about its capabilities. 4. Kalinin K-7. It's not unusual in modern times to see airplanes with massive wingspans, but it was highly out of the ordinary during the early days of aviation, which is why the Soviet-designed Kalinin K-7 must have looked wildly out of place when it was built back in the early 1930s. With a wingspan of over 170 feet, 52 meters, and wings measuring more than 7 feet, 2.1 meters at their thickest point, it was the biggest aircraft of its time and one of the largest ever planes of the pre-jet engine era. The K-7 was meant to function as a troop transport, a civilian vehicle, and/or bomber. In its troop transport configuration, the aircraft could carry 112 fully equipped paratroopers. In civilian mode, it was capable of carrying up to 120 passengers and 15,000 pounds, 6,800 kilograms of mail. When the K-7 flew for the first time in 1933, its designers quickly realized that it was unstable and that the airframe had a serious vibration problem. At the time, aircraft design was still in its infancy. After all, it had been just 30 years after the Wright brothers made the first ever flight in 1903. The K-7's designers tried to fix the K-7's performance issues, but the experimental plane only completed 7 test flights before it crashed due to a structural failure of one of the tail booms. 14 people died in the accident, and the project was abandoned. Progrev T and the Big Wind. One of the Soviet Union's boldest machines of the Cold War era was the Progrev T. It was essentially a T-54 or T-55 battle tank with an MiG-15 fighter jet engine in place of where the cannon would normally be. Unlike conventional tanks, the Progrev T was not meant for destroying other vehicles. It was intended to function as a minesweeper, with the idea that by pointing it at a minefield, the heat and force of the jet blast would blow gravel and earth away to expose underground mines. Only one Progrev T prototype was ever built. It was supposedly deployed in Afghanistan for a short period, but the vehicle never made it past the experimental stage. This wasn't the only time the Soviets tried attaching a fighter jet engine to a ground vehicle. After the failure of the Progrev T, the so-called Big Wind was born. Built on the chassis of a World War II-era T-34 tank, the Big Wind boasted a pair of Tumansky R-24 turbojets in place of its gun turret. Developed during the 1980s, the bizarre-looking vehicle was designed to function as a giant fire truck. Its engines were fitted with water hoses that were capable of spraying 220 gallons, 833 liters of water per second, which made it ideal for extinguishing the large oil field fires that sometimes come along with oil production. The Big Wind came in handy when a catastrophic blaze broke out in a Kuwaiti oil field. At the time, the tank had not been tested yet, but the Soviets readily volunteered the vehicle in the firefighting efforts. It was reportedly a success, and the Big Wind played a majorly helpful role in the 8-month fight to put out the flames. Today, it's owned by a Hungarian gas company. 2. Lockheed YF-12. Developed for the United States Air Force during the 1950s and 60s, the Lockheed YF-12 was a twin-seat version of the top-secret, single-seat Lockheed A-12 reconnaissance aircraft. At the time, the CIA-operated A-12 and its military counterpart, the SR-71 Blackbird, were unknown to the public. And after investing copious amounts of time and money into developing these top-secret spy planes, the government wanted to keep it that way. To avoid having the existence of these aircraft revealed in a way that was beyond its control, the government announced the development of a similar experimental aircraft in 1964. Details about the YF-12 prototype were purposely leaked to the public, while certain information, including its role in the development of the A-12 and SR-71 planes, was purposely kept hidden. By letting people know bits and pieces, the government effectively distracted society from the type of curiosity that might prompt them to find out about the A-12 and SR-71, or the true purpose of these planes. The ruse worked for decades, enabling the top-secret aircraft to operate away from the prying eyes of the public. Meanwhile, the YF-12 proved to be an impressive plane in its own right. During the Vietnam War, it set world speed records in excess of 2,000 miles per hour, 3,200 kilometers per hour, and reached record altitudes of over 80,000 feet, 24,000 meters, making it the world's largest, heaviest, and fastest crewed interceptor of the time. The YF-12's records were eventually surpassed by the SR-71, which reached speeds of Mach 3.2, or 3.2 times the speed of sound, and flew at altitudes of over 85,000 feet, 25,900 meters. 1. Mikoyan-Gurevich MiG-25. Known by its NATO reporting name, Foxbat, the Mikoyan-Gurevich MiG-25 is a Soviet-designed supersonic interceptor and reconnaissance aircraft. It's also one of the fastest ever military aircraft to enter service. Designed during the 1960s, the MiG-25 gave the United States military a run for its money, even before much was known about it. The limited amount of intelligence that the military collected was enough to indicate that the aircraft was both large and highly maneuverable. Based on what little U.S. officials knew about it, they felt compelled to step up the American military's development of similar aircraft. The MiG-25 entered service in 1970. 6 years later, in 1976, Soviet pilot Viktor Belenko defected in an MiG-25 to the United States via Japan. This proved to be the American military's lucky break in terms of finally getting an up-close and personal look at the aircraft. After landing on the Japanese island of Hokkaido, Belenko fired 2 warning shots as a caution to airport employees to keep a safe distance. He asked the police to cover the plane with a tarp due to its highly secretive nature, and he requested asylum in the United States. Belenko's bargaining chip worked immensely in his favor, to say the least. The MiG-25 remained heavily guarded for the remainder of its stay in Japan. According to a New York Times report, the Soviet Union ordered the immediate return of both the MiG-25 and Belenko. The article further revealed that after the MiG-25 was first spotted in Japanese airspace, the country's military dispatched 2 stealth aircraft to track it down, but it was undetectable on their radar screens. As Belenko touched down at the airport, he deployed a chute to slow down the landing aircraft. In addition to stating that he wanted to seek refuge in the US, he explained that he didn't have enough fuel to get there on his own. As you've probably already guessed, Belenko's request for asylum was granted. American and Japanese officials disassembled the MiG-25 and relished the opportunity to learn more about the super-secretive aircraft. Belenko went on to become a US citizen and a successful businessman, military consultant, and public speaker who shared his experiences with his audiences. Thanks for watching. Which one of these top-secret military vehicles would you want to drive? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe. See you next time. Bye.